Hello,
I'm Mark,
I'm Holly.
and today we're going to show you some diver pro tips.
So our first thing we're going to talk about is how to make a dive site map.
Yeah, this is actually a very useful skill, especially if you come to do your Divemaster course. This is one of your task requirements to complete the course. It's actually going diving a dive site, mapping it, and also actually helps you if you ever become a professional, or when you come and complete a Divemaster and you actually work for a dive centre and you're diving sites and learning to guide them, dive maps are very important.
So we're here in Roatan and we actually mapped a site for you guys today, but we're going to take you through the process from step 1 all the way to when our map's complete and finish it off with a briefing of our site. So let's get into it. Alright, so first things first, we're going to want to gather our equipment. You're going to need the basic dive equipment, mask, snorkel, fins, BCD regulators. But on top of that, we're also going to want some specialized equipment just to help us out with our mapping a little bit. So the first thing we're going to need is a compass. And then on top of that, you're also going to want a dive slate.
Yeah, and one thing that's great is Scuba Pro do these great wet notes. That's like a book that you can clip onto yourself and you can write in it. And one of the most important things as well is a pencil. You'll know, won't you?
Yes.
And also what you'll need as well is a depth gauge on your SPG or even a dive computer, so you can actually track the depths of the dive site at key points around the dive site for you to explore.
So let's get those pieces of equipment together. So you've got everything ready and you're ready to head out diving. But there's one thing you want to do beforehand. Before you go down on the dive, you want to have a general idea of what the topography of the site is going to look like. Basically, the site at an aerial view. So you can do this in 2 ways. The first way would be to put your snorkel in and go for a little snorkel around that dive site with your slates and just take a quick note of what the dive site looks like from above, sort of like a skeleton of the site.
And a second way, which is a really great way, we all love modern technology now, and one of the ways we can do this is by using Google. We all know what Google's like, checking out streets. We can actually do that with dive sites as well, where we actually look at the area where we're going to dive, have a rough location. So at the moment we're in the west end of Roatan, so we'll use Google to actually look on this area, find the dive site. If we know the coordinates, it helps us very easily to get that pinpoint exact location. But if we have a general location, we can then bring the computer over the top and zoom in on top of that site and get an idea of where the breakers are, where you see some deeper parts, we know the wall is dropping off, so it helps give you a great idea. But always be wary that these are taken by satellites in space, and some days, like today, it is cloudy, so you might not be able to see as great from when that photo was taken. But maybe the best way is always to jump in the water and do it yourself.
Yep. You've got a general idea of what the dive site looks like from your aerial view now. So the best way to actually figure out how to dive a dive site is to dive the dive site. So what we're going to do is use that nice 5-point descent, which is our acronym SORTED, and the O stands for orientation. This means that you're going to set your compass in the direction either back to the boat or which way the shore is. You can see in the little clip that I set my compass towards the shore, and it shows me the shore is in a southeasterly direction. That helps me kind of navigate where I'm going to be headed on this wall dive. So because the dive that we did today was a wall dive, we want to make sure we know the depth at the top of that wall. So on your general idea of your skeleton of your dive site, you can put down the depth that your depth gauge is showing at the top of the wall. Another helpful thing is going to be to know how to measure distance underwater. Now, I don't know if you've seen many people underwater with tape measures, but I sure haven't, and that's because there's a really easy way to measure distance.
One of the best ways to measure distance is by kick cycles. Now, this is easy because it'll be custom to you almost, because, you know, I'm tall, Holly's slightly shorter. But the way we measure a kick cycle is actually by doing a flutter kick, is the best way. So you have your fins both sides, and you go 1, and then back all through, and back to the beginning is 1 full kick cycle. So up, down, and return is 1 kick cycle, and that normally on average is what, 1 meter on average for most people. So that gives you a good idea when you're measuring between, say, a pillar coral to a barrel sponge, or between the length of a canyon in a dive site, so you can work out the range from the mooring to maybe the wall and stuff. So it's actually a very valuable skill.
Yep, it's also helpful for in bad visibility or something. If you were to swim towards a wall, you know it's around about 15 kick cycles away, or 15 meters.
Yes.
And you can note that on your map.
Exactly.
Cool. We mentioned that our dive site was a wall site. Now lots of walls here in Roatan drop off to 40 plus meters. Now 40 meters is your absolute maximum as a recreational diver, so we don't want to go down to 60 just because we want to add it to our map. So what I did was I went to the bottom where the corals kind of stopped and there wasn't much to see anymore, and that was at 25 meters. I then noted that this was the bottom of the wall. I put that the slope off from the wall went to 40 meters plus, which is where I will not be diving, so it doesn't matter for me to know what's down there anyway. As we headed up, we did see a couple pillar corals, which are a natural reference. So Mark's going to talk about how that comes in useful for our mapping.
Yes, so when we're mapping, when you're looking at a dive site and when you're learning to even guide a dive site, you're going to use quite a lot of time natural references. Me as a dive guide, I use natural references the vast majority of the time, because in this dive site, the dive site, ironically, was called Pillar Coral. Now what was great about it was when we were moving along the wall, it was very, very steep and sharp and dropped sloping down gradually. Now as Holly said, that was around about 25 meters. And then when we were going along the wall, we actually came across the pillar stack that was actually sitting out on the deeper slope, but was coming up to a maximum depth of 25 meters, as you can see in this clip just now. And this is where we're able to mark the depth as well. We took the depth of this and we're able to see that, yes, if I was running along this dive site, I saw that, I would know from this point to head back to the mooring. I would turn to a southeasterly direction back to land, and it would take me actually to the mooring of this dive site. So natural references are great to mark out and learn as a dive guide and for your mapping project as well.
There's some natural references that are actually an aid to you as a diver. They can help you know when to turn around the dive, or if you're doing a drift dive, when to start that 3-minute safety stop. These can shallow you up onto the reef if you're a wall, and that's what happened on this dive site. We went up through the canyons, which brought us onto a shallower reef at 5 meters, instead of just coming straight up and over like a square.
One advantage of this is by using these natural topographies, you can easily identify, as Holly said, to the sand patch or to a nice shallow reef as well. Now these canyons will actually have a sloping topography, and topography is very useful in you to know how to dive the dive site and find the shallower area. Also normally leads 9 times out of 10 back to land as well. Now another thing you can use as well is actually marine life as well. Now marine life are very good to use as a reference for yourself. You know, on this dive we came across a sleeping turtle. Yes, we can mark it on the dive site, draw it in all colourful for our divers when we're briefing it, but the chances are that turtle won't be there later. But certain species of fish will always stay in the same area. Normally moray eels are a very good spot, or even octopus, because octopus have dens and stay in the same spot. So if you know where this octopus is every time, that can be used as natural reference as well if you know his dens between. Fish and marine life is another good idea to use in your natural reference as well, but be careful because fish do swim away at times.
Coming away from that 3-minute safety stop, you're all done and you get to the surface. You have this nice skeleton of a map. But not everybody can tell what you've just drawn. You want to make sure that you give it a title. You give it some color. You may even redraw it to make those lines a little crisper. You want to make sure that you can follow the map and that other people can follow the map. People that might be dive guides, people that are going shore diving on their own, they want to be able to follow this map as well. So it can be helpful to give it a key. What can be included in a key? You
can use marine life. You can use colours of green for maybe for like seagrass beds. You could use brown or orange for the reef, and you can also use yellow, of course, for sand.
You also want to make sure that you've got your compass directions somewhere on that map and that you have some distance measurements. Now, we use meters, but if you're in America, you may do your whole map in feet, which is totally fine too.
And one thing to be wary of when you're doing a map, you're not going to get it perfect the first time. So you might actually need to dive the site or even snorkel the site a few times to really tune it in, fine tune it and get it looking perfect. Because realistically, the way you want the map to come out is you can pass it to your friend, they could dive that site based on your map and have a really good idea where they are on the dive site, and it helps them as well.
Now, maps don't have to be perfect. Dive sites do change over time. For example, back at home in Bermuda, after each hurricane, some sand moves, some swim-throughs close up, and that map's gonna have to be changed. So you wanna have it able to change, which is why I'm actually gonna draw it on my iPad, which you'll see coming up in a little bit.
Which a great thing, as I was just about to say, but Holly snuck in there as usual, is you don't have to draw it just on paper and slates. You can actually transfer it onto a computer if you're good on design, or even an iPad. It makes it very easier and colourful and easy to correct as well. So you can use modern technology to help you create the maps and then print them off and laminate them.
Yep, so we'll show you our finalized map here and maybe even give you a dive site briefing using the map. See ya!
Thanks guys, bye!
So today we're diving a dive site called Pillar Coral Reef. Pillar Coral Reef is just past West Bay and towards the Sandy Bay area. It's about a 7-minute boat ride away, so we don't need to get ready right away when we get on the boat. What's nice about this dive site is it does tend to get a little bit of current, so we will be doing a drift dive today, though we'll start at this mooring bowl and moor up the boat for when we jump in. We're going to jump in and everyone's going to make sure everyone else is okay, make sure your buddy's feeling good, and then we'll all head down together into this 10-meter zone. This 10-meter zone is just on top of the wall, and because this is a wall dive, we're going to drop down onto the wall and see what we can find. Recently we've had some little turtle sightings here, and also we had a moray eel. This is my sign for moray eel. So I'll point out anything cool that I see along the way. Our maximum depth for this dive site is going to be 25 to 30 meters. Make sure you keep an eye on your nitrox if you're on nitrox, as that's going to limit your depth as well. We're going to run along the wall, and I'm going to be asking your air throughout the dive, giving you this sign for air. When I give you your air sign, if you could please tell me your thousands on the arm and your hundreds on the fingers, and let me know when you hit 1500 or half a tank, so that we can start to shallow up and back on top of the reef. When we shallow up, we're going to follow one of these canyons up. What these do is they slowly slope up and through the reef, and they have lots of cool little fairy basslet fish living in there. So we'll head up one of these canyons and out into where the sand follows around the top part of the reef. Now you can see here, the farthest away part of the reef, or the top part, is 5 meters, which is perfect for our 3-minute safety stop at the end of our dive. Our maximum dive time is going to be 60 minutes, or until you hit 800 psi to start that safety stop, which is your low on air. So if you could please let me know when you hit 800 if I haven't asked you already. We'll then do our safety stop in this area, seeing what we can find. In the shallows, there are some beautiful fan corals, and there's lots of sponges that we can look up as well. Once we've finished our 3-minute safety stop, I'll say, all done, is everybody ready to go up? And we'll follow the line that has my surface marker buoy attached to it. At the surface, we'll all wait together for the boat to come and pick us up, and we'll drift slowly back out towards the wall so it doesn't get too shallow for the boat.